what's most important, I realize, is picking the mountain I want to climb. And I mean metaphorically and physically, right? It's the mountain that's going to allow me to make the most impact in the world, and it's going to make me who I want to become next.
I'm Tracy Lovejoy.
And I'm Shannon Lucas.
We're the co-CEOs of Catalyst Constellations, which is dedicated to catalyzing innate change makers to accelerate positive change. This is our podcast, Move Fast, Break Shit, Burnout, where we highlight catalysts that are creating amazing change in the world.
And in this season of the podcast, we are diving deep into the skills that make catalysts successful. And we have a catalyst here today who has mad skills and also catalyzes those skills in hundreds, thousands of people around the globe. We are delighted today to have Whynde Kuehn with us. Whynde is recognized globally as a highly sought after pioneer and thought leader in business architecture. She's worked with an extensive array of organizations to build their capacity for end-to-end strategy execution, including Fortune 500 enterprises, governmental and nonprofit organizations, social enterprises, startups, and cross-sector initiatives. She's the creator of the online platform and community BizArch Mastery, co-founder of the BA Guild, which is the Business Architecture Guild, and chair of Women in Architecture. There's more. She is an adjunct professor at Penn State. She's an Institute for Digital Transformation Fellow. She's a Fast Company executive board member and author of the amazing book, Strategy to Reality. Thank you for being here today with us, Whynde.
Thank you so much for having me. What a joy and honor to be here with you both.
I love having more time with you. So let's kick off, Whynde. Let us know, what is it? How do you relate to the concept of catalyst?
I could not resonate any more with the concept of catalyst. Every day, I wake up and serve a global vision and community around, as you were saying, this idea of end-to-end strategy to execution powered by business architecture. And so I am a catalyst for that idea. And I realize, thanks to you in your book, that I am a catalyst of other catalysts. And those catalysts are business architects. And I just have to tell you this because I feel like you'll appreciate this. In 2020, I set off on a journey because on 6 continents, no matter where I find these business architects, there was something so special about them. They're also almost altruistic in wanting to make a difference for their organizations and for their societies. And so I teamed up with a strengths coach. We used the Clifton Strengths instrument, and we surveyed business architects in 14 countries. And we actually found some superpowers for this group of people compared to the general population. They were intellection, connectedness, and those 2 things coupled with the strength of strategic helps them to move very fast, right, and see the way forward. So for me, that put a little bit of science behind this special group of people, but it wasn't until I read your book and found you that I realized now there's a very specific word and concept. Business architects are catalysts.
BizArch equals catalyst.
Nice. Love it.
I love it. And you are the leader of those groups.
Lucky me. Very lucky me.
Yeah, lucky all of us. Lucky all of us. Thank you. That's really beautiful. One thing we love to ask all folks that we have on the podcast is, what are essential skills that have made you successful as a catalyst? And we'd love to hear any of the stories that have helped you really build the muscle of those skills.
Well, this might sound funny as a skill, but it is what I really think I'm good at. And that is the skill of taking a journey. So that means setting my sights on something big. That means taking step by step by step up a mountain with utter patience. It's embracing the challenges and the journey along the way, and really just falling in love with journey. And where this came about for me, a coach literally once told me that my word was big. All right, so no surprise there. But for me, this ability, right, of journey taking came about from enterprise-wide business transformations, from catalyzing, right, the introduction of business architecture into organizations, which takes many years oftentimes, but very much so from a physical side. I'm an ultramarathoner and I'm a mountaineer. And so honestly, where I finally turned the corner and learned this was on Kilimanjaro, and I never went back. Right. I just realized that, there was a point where I'm like, oh my gosh, is today not going to be can we just have one easy day? Like, I got to climb that. And for me, I just realized, what? There is no perfect path. You just got to embrace it all and say, like, what am I waking up and doing today? So it was for me, the physical being, that experience of how to patiently take a journey step by step, translating to what I do in business and work. And why I think this is so important is that it's given me a perspective and a resilience. If I think about the stages that you both talk about, right? There's sort of the storming and the visioning stage, and then there's the orchestration stage, and then there could be, we don't want, but there could be the burnout stage. When we're in the orchestration stage, and when that resistance comes, that's when I lean in, and I actually think it's fun to influence people and try to bring them along on the change. Of course, though, until I reached that turning point in my physical mountaineering, this change was really hard. It felt slow. It felt intensely personal when things went wrong. And then when the mission was going wrong, now my self-worth is tied to my mission, right? So this has gone very wrong for me in the past, but now I think I realize that I got it. I got the journey. No matter what happens, I'm just going to keep stepping. And what's most important, I realize, is picking the mountain I want to climb. And I mean metaphorically and physically, right? It's the mountain that's going to allow me to make the most impact in the world. And it's going to make me who I want to become next.
There are 1,000 things that I want to unpack from that, Whynde, like just like brain going in so many directions. All right, I'm going to try with one, because if I ask you all the questions at the same time, that's not useful for you. I am so curious. So you've read the book, that with catalysts, including you, right, with big being your word, we'll set these big goals. And that's typically what that's what the goal is. Oh my gosh, what am I saying? That's where people want to get. And what you're doing is saying you've had this shift, that the journey is your superpower, right? And so that's really different than saying, this is what I'm doing. Like, you're like, I'm invested in the journey itself. How
100%.
did that come to be? I just heard you say a second ago, when I hit that moment in your own mountaineering, how do you make that switch? How do you make that satisfying?
I love that so much. Honestly, it's the realization that it's never going to be easy. And you just have to love that, because here's the other thing. I did math, right? So if I climb a much harder mountain than Kilimanjaro, right, that takes weeks, right? Do you know the split percentage I stand on the top of that mountain? That was another big realization for me, that I've spent weeks up and down, and I was there for 25 minutes. And so it's just got to become about something bigger.
Oh my God, that was so awesome. That when you achieved the goal, you spent 25 minutes there.
Yep.
And that is so right? In any context that we're creating change, the ratio of time of what it takes to achieve that goal versus the actual moment of achievement, we've never talked about that ratio ever, Whynde.
Yeah. And I also think over time, my perspective of just life has shifted to, you know what, we're never going to get right, and we're never going to get it done. Mm-hmm. So it's perpetual creation, and that's what it's all about. It's just trying to, as you say, enjoy that journey, not those 25 minutes on the top. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. So how do we enjoy the journey? What are some of the things that you've learned? Like, I hear you use words like resilience, and I heard you use the word patient, which is not often attributed to catalysts or self-described. So how do we begin to enjoy that? How do we become patient for the journey?
I think one of the biggest things is that every big goal is made up of a series of smaller goals. And you all talk about it, right? You've got to work towards those. And you've got to celebrate those, right? So you
Mhm.
can't just celebrate the big ending, especially if it's going to be, a ways out into the future. So it's just the little moments. And I think it is, I know it's easier said than done. It's somehow finding a way to get comfortable in the uncomfortable. So I have been up the metaphorical business architecture mountain many times. I find it now fun because I know when we get to this point, someone is going to say this and someone's going to say that. And I actually make it a little bit of a game to say, not a game, not in a bad way, but to say, all right, you don't believe in this, but here are the steps I'm going to take to try to convince you and try to show wins and try to show you how this idea is of value. So somehow finding the comfort in the uncomfortable. And of course, it's finding the advocates around you too that will give you the energy, other catalysts, but advocates of whatever it is that we're doing, because that makes it much more comfortable along the way as well. And just having that constant reinforcement.
That's amazing. So I'm hearing so many skills that sit underneath this, breaking down your goals and seeing those smaller goals that you can achieve, celebrating when you get there, becoming comfortable with the uncomfortable, which will mean naming it. I'm uncomfortable with this right now. There's something that's come up that I need to, kind of be with, and make sure that you're finding your advocates that are going to help that move forward. Amazing. All right. What's the biggest goal you've ever tackled, Whynde, if big is your word?
Okay. Big is my word. Oh, I love that question. Physically 100-mile ultramarathon, in an organization, top to bottom, enterprise-wide transformation, like the whole thing, every bit of it going at one time, changing the way people work and the whole way the organization is operating. Now that too, by the way, is a good metaphor. You don't just do that all in one big chunk. That is multiple different goals, multiple different, parts transforming together. And even within those, right, there's multiple parts in multiple deliveries.
The multiple and the ratio is just so loud for me in this conversation, just remembering again and again that no matter how big the goal is that you set, that we have to be ready to look at it in small chunks and really be aware of how long this part is compared to reaching the top of the mountain. Like, it's just so profound, Whynde. Thank you.
Absolutely.
What would you say is the biggest challenge that you're facing as a Catalyst leader today?
So if we think about the innovation curve, business architecture as a global discipline has not crossed the chasm between early adopters and early majority. And I think there's two big things that are going to help us to cross that chasm. One is educating executives worldwide, and the other is shaping higher education. I told you I like to do big, right? So for me, that is the challenge right now, and in trying to influence that in many different ways and initiatives. That's important for the vision, but that's important because all those amazing catalysts, those amazing business architects, if we can collectively cross that chasm, their lives are going to become easier, right, as well. So for me, the challenge in that is increasing resistance, of course, undoubtedly. But the other bit is really keeping the space for rejuvenation and life. And I'm still working on it. And I have to actually work really hard on it, right? So the schedule goes across time zones. There's a lot to do, but I've gotten actually relentless on getting better at this, making the hard choices on what to do and not do. It's very hard for me to say no to things, and just really making space in the schedule, right, to allow me to focus where I need to. A breakthrough for me was understanding the maker schedule versus the manager schedule. I'm a maker. I need that like open time to think and write, but that also has to coexist with the manager schedule, right, for the other things that I do. So I've gotten very creative, but that's still my challenge: the rejuvenation and the space that I need to do big things.
What does rejuvenation have to look like for you to really fuel the big things? Like, how much space does that take?
Oh, I love that question. I'm a little bit more cyclical.
Mhm.
So for me, what it doesn't look like is 9 to 5 and weekends off. For me, it's rejuvenation happens in microcycles and macrocycles. So in my week, I have some busy days, and then I have some days where my calendar is open, and I rejuvenate by actually just working and focusing and not being in meetings and creating things.
Mhm.
And by running, right? So that's kind of my microcycle. My macrocycle is going harder during certain times of the year, and I love it. I get to be around people. I get to do, have all that energy. And then other parts of the year, I'm kind of like chilling, right? Like I have a little bit less of a heavy schedule. So that's rejuvenation for me. It's space to create
Mhm.
and to commune with nature, right? And just kind of be, yeah.
I love how you bring in the idea, as you talked about the maker and manager, right? What that means to have space in your calendar to do the creative work, and how that is an act of rejuvenation in and of itself. And so rejuvenation doesn't always have to be not working. It's choosing how you work, when you work, and giving yourself the permission to have that spaciousness. What did it take to flip the switch to be allowed to do that in your calendar?
And you couldn't have said all of that better, by the way. I honestly got to, because I have for years and years and years been putting the mission and everyone else before me. And what flipped the switch for me was, honestly, I could take on so much. I could do so much. I overloaded my own capacity. And my life and being able to show up with the space, the ability, the energy to do what really mattered was what made me say, all right, I really need an assistant. I need to look at the schedule different. I got to start saying no. It was me and the mission at risk if I didn't. And I just, like I said, I finally got to the breaking point.
Yeah. It's so interesting. Have you been ever able to flip someone before they got to the breaking point, knowing that you're a catalyst of catalysts? Have you ever helped them begin to move towards shifting that schedule? Or is the breaking point a necessary point?
The breaking point is not necessary.
It's not.
I think if someone can, I mean, I had to kind of hit it, but I think if someone can see someone else that they trust, even the schedule is actually a really good example, because by doing that, now I realize I give other people permission to say, sorry, this is my work day. I don't do, this is my head's downtime, and I will be better for that, right? If I have this. So I don't think they need to reach the breaking point. I just think they need to see it emulated and working and supported, right? With the right people.
That's fantastic, right? Because you think of how many catalysts are drawn to those very high energy environments where it's really not modeled. Yet they think I'm going to be able to go in there and then hold my boundaries. And what I hear you saying is that it may not be either or, but it's breaking point or having really good models around you that are doing that. And so, catalysts out there, think about the environments that you're choosing to be in. And are you moving toward needing a breaking point to give yourself the space to do it? Or are you modeling or having others model it so that you're able to build that in? That's profound. Again, thank you.
And this reminds me of, on the flip side, a while ago when I was running the team, I had 100 business architects working for me. I will never forget, because I used to stand up and say, I will never expect you to work harder than I am, and I will never. And then someone said, but you're sending emails at 2 a.m. We feel like we have to. And that was also you got to model it. That's really important.
Yeah.
It's a hard position as a leader. I'm wondering if you have any advice, because I've tried to model that too. But if you're not the CEO, if your seniors still or your peers are showing up that way, their expectation has, in my experience, that you are showing up and working on the weekends and all this stuff. You're an executive leader, all of the things. But then you have to buffer and it's almost like a dual personality, because you want to model then also for your team. How have you navigated that sort of striation before?
Wow, like having to do the hard work, but also kind of model the right balance, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, being in that position where I don't know, have you been in that position where you're torn between those two parts of the org and the level that you sit at?
Yes, I think it's still, it's the presence of what I think I do outright, right? So I will schedule an email to not go out on somebody's holiday, right? Even if that was my time to work and that was my time off, right? I just try to be really cognizant of how it's going to be seen instead of like playing up how I'm doing it and how I'm working, right? Because like I said, I kind of have macro and micro cycles. And so having to fit into another organization, right? And kind of how those dynamics work, it's just being cognizant.
Well said. Keeping that awareness. All right. Well, I could continue to ask 1,000 questions. I am going to turn it over to Shannon for rapid fire.
All right, but I just have to comment because I have to share a moment. What you said was so resonant about I'm a thru hiker, I do mountaineering, and I remember as I was prepping I was soloing the JMT and I was doing a training exercise. I just had ankle surgery. It was really painful. And it was a very moderate, like up and down. And I was like whining in my head. And I was like, Shannon, if you don't like up and down, if you don't like the journey, why the hell are you doing this? And the reframe was like, oh, I can go at my own pace. Like you hike your own hike. And I just love that metaphor for Catalyst. Like it's so beautiful, Whynde. So thank you for that.
I love that. And we've picked these hard things because they matter. So lean in and love that journey.
Totally. And enjoy the beauty and the scenery and all of the things that go around with it. I love it. All right. Moving on to rapid fire. One thing that you do to get ready for a big meeting.
For a big meeting, really important meeting, let's say executives, I plan not only the outcomes, but the orchestration. It's a little bit like a song, like, all right, we're going to do this and the energy is going to flow like this. And we're going to kind of end this way. And I anticipate resistance or people's perspectives. And I will even go to the extent of, all right, so-and-so, can you advocate when we get to this? And so if it's a really important meeting, it's kind of orchestrated a little bit, even kind of like a song. Yep.
I love it. We'll call you the puppet master. I'm super curious to hear. So in your micro and macro cycles, what's a favorite way to spend a free day?
Can I just be honest? No plans. I love to just no plans, offline, don't even have to check, and just be, which will always include a long run and some nature. I live in Norway. I couldn't be luckier, right? I always have that to escape to, but just the ability to kind of free and flow wherever my mind and desires go for the day. That's my favorite.
Nice. Do you get many free days?
I make them. I have to make them.
Awesome.
But I do make them. I didn't used to make them, but I make them now. Yeah.
All right. Favorite famous catalyst, alive or dead, and why?
Desmond Tutu. Because he catalyzed change, important change for South Africa and the world, in the face of such challenges. I mean, no future without forgiveness, right? These ideas are so powerful. And he also did it with a levity, a wisdom, a kindness, and finding an innate joy around it, and finding joy when things are really hard. I did have the unbelievable opportunity. I have met the man in person. So that will always touch my life. And just to say he's that light, wise person that you always see, that's truly who he is.
Amazing. He fits so well with everything that you've just said about the journey. But I think I have to ask for our listeners, how did you meet him?
I was, okay, so there was a point in my life where I went to my company. I said, I'm going to work 9 months. I'm going to work 12 months in a 9-month period. I'm going to take 3 months off to do pro bono, right? So this is how I make space. And one of the main things I was doing was working for the African Leadership Institute. Desmond Tutu gave his name to this group of amazing leadership fellows. So I was working with them. And so how I met Desmond Tutu was, as honestly as I have chills saying this, he was addressing these fellows and challenging them to take the continent out of poverty. And so I got to meet him in that very special small meeting. Yeah.
Yeah, top that other podcast guest.
Cute, cute. Oh.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. We'd love to hear. Do you have a call to action for our listeners?
Honestly, read the book by Tracy and Shannon. Particularly if you are listening to this and you are a business architect, this is you. You're home. You are a catalyst. For those that want to learn more about business architecture powered strategy execution, I have a book called Strategy to Reality. So check that out. And also, coming from a long time, workaholic, we've talked a little bit about my journey, but trust me, you've got to find the space to rejuvenate. And if you won't do it for yourself, do it for your mission, because if you burn out, the world will not be able to receive your gift. And one thing that a friend told me, you've already heard me say it here, but that really was a game changer for me, is rest your own way, rejuvenate your own way, right? It doesn't have to be the way everybody else does, but whatever it is, find it, because the world needs you, Catalyst.
And a burnt out catalyst creates no change at all.
Exactly.
We will put the link to your book in the show notes. Whynde, thank you so much. I can see why Tracy has enjoyed all your previous conversations. It's such a delight to be with you.
Thank you. Pleasure and honor. Thank you so much. And thank you for the work that you do for all the catalysts around the world. You give voice and the power behind us. So thank you both.
That's lovely. Thank you.
Thank you. To our listeners, thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to learn more about how to accelerate positive change, go to our website at catalystconstellations.com.
And be sure to check out our book, Move Fast, Break Shit, Burnout. Thank you, Whynde, for the kind words. If you have other catalysts in your life, hit the share button and send a link.